So, hey, everybody. I am here with Dr. Harner, who is the superintendent of the Quakertown School District. Dr. Harner, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
So just before we even start with me asking you some questions about what's happening in the community, why don't you tell everyone that's watching a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the school district, what your experience is, just so that there are people that are going to be watching this that aren't from Quakertown. So just kind of tell people a little bit about yourself first.
Well, I've been here in Quakertown Community School District since January of 14. So come January would be the completion of my 7th year. It's been exciting. One of the things that I find fascinating about our community is how it really, the word community is in our school district name, Quakertown Community School District, and it really is a wonderful community to be in. Everyone wants to be a part of the action, which is really good for us. And over the last 7 months, as you can imagine, everyone has had a very strong opinion about what we need to be doing. So I have, thousands of stakeholders who have a direct interest of how we provide our educational services, how we provide food services, how we genuinely take care of every single child, and also take care of our 600 employees that we're responsible for.
Well, and those are some of the questions that I want to ask you and have you share, because not everyone has the blessing to be at some of your board meetings. So I know that you feel like you're talking about this all the time.
Word. These are going well after midnight, so I started at 7. So
let's start, and I don't have these in any order, so I apologize if I'm jumping around. But let's start at the beginning when COVID hit us in March, and the kids stopped going to class, and we originally thought we were only on a 2-week hiatus, and then all of a sudden they weren't going back. How did you find that the community did in regards to the kids not going back to school? I had a senior, as you know, and I thought you guys did a phenomenal job personally with getting those kids to have some experiences that were going on, even though they missed their senior year. But I'm sure that you got a lot of feedback from people in regards to what went well, what didn't. So can you share your thoughts? I think
the week of the Friday, the 13th of March, is when all the superintendents in Bucks County made a decision about 11:30 in the morning that we were going to close schools for the next week. That, if you remember the week leading up to that decision, I had parents and out there in social media saying, why aren't you closing schools? Why aren't you closing schools? The NBA stopped its playoffs. March Madness was canceled. All of these things, fortunately for your son and other wrestlers and winter sports players, they had an opportunity to finish their season, because I remember going off to the state championships with our wrestling team down in Hershey. But that was the context then. The context now is like totally different. But what we did in the springtime was we were focused on the short game. What was really neat was we went out, we thought we would only be out for a couple of weeks, if that. And the teachers overwhelmingly reached out to their students and started giving some online work. We weren't that good at it. We had the learning management platforms, Canvas, which we adopted in 2015 or 2014, latter part of 2014, as our learning management system and preparing our students for college. So we had that out there. Not every one of our teachers were good at it, but by the time we finished the springtime up, they were awesome. Our objective then was to make sure we provided educational opportunities on a daily basis for students, beginning at the 3rd week of that hiatus, when the governor said we're not going to go back to school at least for a couple more weeks. If you remember, it was in 2-week increments. As soon as we canceled schools on Friday, the governor, a half an hour later, declared 3 hours later, declared a county of emergency and a state of emergency for Bucks County. And so we were in alignment there. Then 2 weeks later, he said we're going to be out for another 2 weeks, which took us into April. Right away, we went out, communicated with our teachers, with our community. I had multiple board meetings with and information sessions with the board about making sure they knew we were going to do our best to take care of students. The one thing that we had to be very cautious of back then, and we are cautious now, is making sure we meet our legal obligations to every student.
Right.
And the legal obligations to every student, you would think that was all 5,000 of our students, 5,100 of our students last year. And you're correct in my heart, my mind, and our work. But our legal obligations, because of federal mandates, federal legislation for our students with disabilities, our English language learners, and our students who live in that are recognized to be living in poverty. And we had a lot of obligations to them. So if we made it mandatory and we weren't able to provide those things, we would have millions of dollars of potential lawsuits against us, and in our business model would could bankrupt us, at least put us in years behind from where we were. So we made it optional, and it was amazing how many students did really well. And the reason I say that, how they did really well, last board meeting we had a presentation. I don't know if you watched it, but the link's up online, and we had on our benchmark assessment, our fall assessment, compared to the last benchmark that was taken in the winter. We didn't do any assessments in the springtime, and the learning loss that we had across almost all groups was minimal compared to what we were expecting, and especially given that you had a summertime in there, and you automatically get that anyway. So I was feeling very good about it. But some of the students that you would expect to have trouble, where they don't have the support at home, like you give your boys, other parents give their children. We have a lot of students who aren't that fortunate, and those were the students who had the greatest learning loss, of which now we're micromanaging their academic careers to make sure they're in. That's why we started off the school year where every student that was in that situation, they were in school 4 days a week, while everyone else was only in school 2 days a week. So
wow, that's good to know. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we had students with disabilities or ELs, and a lot of our other students that were academically at risk. We let them come in 4 days a week because we knew we needed to make sure that their learning loss from the springtime, from the hybrid model and all, would be minimal. So is it perfect? No. I've been asked by my board members who are educators themselves, are you more worried about grade level achievement, or are you more worried about growth? I'm worried about both. But right now, I'm more worried about their mental health and the safety piece behind their mental health. This has been tough for everybody, and I know it's been tough. Go ahead.
I was going to say that touches on another question that I was going to ask is, now, I mean, we at the community center, we had to close as well. I mean, the kids couldn't go to school. They couldn't come to the community center. We were trying to do things, via social media and connecting with them that way. And as I was checking in with them and seeing how are their families and how are things going, there were a lot of kids that were really, really missing their friends and so forth. So I guess my question is did your guidance counselors and the social workers and so forth, were they like in overdrive communicating with the kids and helping them? Did we see a lot of depression that you were being notified about?
In the springtime, everybody was all hands on deck, as they are right now, and I couldn't be more pleased with the overall and in the specific quality of the work. Guidance counselors, school psychologists, special ed teams, EL teachers, everybody, grade level teachers, content area teachers, social studies to physics to whatever. They do a gangbuster job. But what we found in the springtime is different than what we're finding in the fall.
Okay, how so?
And specifically is kids are coming back in and they haven't been around their friends. That has been a significant piece. A lot of our upper grade students had the great designs on their projection of their future self. The high school students I'll take first. Mm-hmm. And it's really less so as you go down in grades. and it's juniors, seniors, mostly juniors and sophomores last spring, they're seeing themselves, they got to do this, this, and that in order to graduate, to make themselves ready for college, to do these final things, or these things they were missing out on summer workshops that they had applied to. And I found from the reports out there from the teams of a lot of tough issues. We've always had tough issues during a normal academic year, but I think a lot of the people couldn't see the forest for the trees, that this was a short-term kind of thing. But when you're only 16 years old, right, 4 months is a lifetime.
It is. Now
4 months is, as a young man that I am, is a lot longer. And so it's been rough that way. Coming back in the fall, it is the same thing, just a different day. It is still Groundhog's Day, to use an overused thing. Every morning back in the springtime, I get out of bed and I'm working, for 12, 14-hour days, literally last spring, 7 days a week. That was what our team was doing. That was what administrators were doing, trying to figure out, and keep our fingers in the dike. And getting out of bed was, I was saying to myself, welcome, it's Groundhog Day. It's like a Bill Murray movie. It was. And it wasn't until for the administration and the leadership and our special ed department, the leaders there, plus teachers, psychologists, and all, we really didn't have our act together emotionally ourselves until after school started. We were burnt out.
Right.
And when you're the leader of an organization and you're burnt out, you've got to make sure you got to take care of your team first. And so we've been really good about that transition. Summertime was tough, but I'll back up. We ended up the year, as you know, for graduation phenomenally.
It was.
We had a graduation parade. Never had a car parade like that, a truck parade. Young lady graduated wearing riding her horse.
Yep.
In front of the high school. I mean, it was phenomenal. The things that the adults, the administration, the guidance counselors did, going around and delivering all of the graduation robes with a fire truck.
Right.
And the whistles, and everyone delivering signs. Those little tiny tidbits, that seems like it was 3 years ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
And then people forget that. So then we get ready for the new school year, and they're all worried about what we're going to do now. And right. So it did not give us any respite, frankly, for my team, for the leadership, for the principals, until basically 2 or 3 weeks ago. That was the first time really that I coming into the office that I felt that I didn't owe somebody something, and every minute of every day was accounted for. So it is. Go ahead.
So the kids are, originally it was hybrid, but now they're starting to go back to school where they have the choice to either go full-time in school or full-time out of school. That's correct? Right.
We did a survey of parents, if you recall. We did several surveys during the spring, summer, fall already, and asking parents what they wanted. And then we started producing a model that was acceptable. And it's really been interesting in that model. 25% of the high school students, over 25%, 1 out of every 4 students in high school, their parents want their child to stay at home.
Wow.
Which is the opposite down there at the elementary level, but you would kind of expect that when you have kindergarten, first and second graders, they can't do the virtual thing that well.
Right.
They can't sit still. If you ever were a parent aide or going in and running, helping when your boys would have parties, birthday parties or something, watching all the kids all slithering all over the rug and moving around, they can't sit still. Well, we have most of them back in our buildings now, which is really good. So we're down in the low teens. Our middle teens, 15% of our kids are learning from home, and the elementary years, 6th grade years, a little bit more in Strayer, and then 25% of our kids are learning from home right now at the high school.
Now, Quakertown has always had a high amount or a large quantity of families that either have free or reduced lunches. And I know that during this whole thing, the school district stepped up and you guys had meals available during the summer where the kid come and get food and so forth. Now, are you guys still doing that? Are the kids still being fed? And are you finding that there are more families now that have a need for reduced or free lunches this year because of COVID versus previous years?
We have providing meals through Chartwell's, who we contract out. They're the ones who manage our food service process. Every year we have served thousands of meals, and I believe what we're giving out is about a quarter or maybe even a sixth or an eighth of what we are doing on a daily basis.
Wow.
And that is problematic in itself financially for the school district, but it's also problematic for, we don't know, since they're free for everybody. If the federal government with the CARES Act came in and supported food for anybody. So in the springtime, I don't know if it was May or end of April, the CARES Act money came in, and anyone who would come to school to pick up a lunch or multiple lunches for a couple of days, it was a cold meal with milk in it and sandwiches and other things. But it was all, so we didn't know how many we would get each day. And that grew over time, a lot less in other communities. We made sure that the food banks were supported. I know we had one of our seniors this year, Mason Smith, I think was his name. Mason did his Eagle Scout project, providing a community food drive for our local food bank. And there's several in the area, and we were reaching out to them all the time, making sure they had what they needed. I know our teachers union, our professional association, they were donating money. Everybody was all hands on deck, making sure those who needed it got it. We had teachers, our EL teachers would come in because some of our families, because of the climate on immigration, some of our families were afraid to come in to claim their food. So our teachers would come in and pick up the food. I had authorized them to do that, and they came up and they would deliver to some of our families' homes. Spring, summer, and maybe now. I haven't checked on it since the school year started. But most of them are supposed to be in right now, our students that are ELs and others.
So I'll wrap this up because I know that you've got a million other things to do. If I were to just ask you, what is it that we as a community can do to support the families and the kids during this time? What would you say? I would say with adults, if my message to adults would be show kindness. Show kindness. Everyone has a story. Everyone, you have a story. I have a story of context. I have 2 children of my own. You know, during all of the spring, summer, and the beginning of fall, I had a son over deployed in Somalia. We all have context, and I mean, he's in a combat zone. And so everybody has a context, and people are only thinking of themselves. A lot of people, not everybody, but I see on social media the lack of patience and the lack of kindness in their words. I've never heard a pejorative word or anything that wasn't kind coming out of you, and I've known you for 6 years, and so many others. But people who don't know me, people don't know members of my team, we have worked incredibly long days to offer what we can. And people don't understand that there's a balance. I tried to talk about that in my blogs, and just a couple of blogs ago, the balance between demonstrating to our working faculty, our teachers, the empathy that they have their own context at home. And I have anywhere between 15 and 22 unfilled teaching positions every day because of what's going on right now. I can't find subs. Right.
And if you can't have teachers, you don't have education. So I'm a lifespan. I'm a daycare service more than an educational service. So we have to show empathy there. We have to show understanding. So my adults feel that they're safe, that I am providing as a superintendent, that the right environment for all that. So I ask people that to show kindness and patience for each other, as and you know the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. So that's my big message to everybody. And I just love this community. Everyone has stepped up. Our teachers are doing a great job. Teachers that were average in the past are now above average because they're working so darn hard, and they've had to do a lot of things that they haven't been they should have been doing before, but they're doing great now because of the accountability piece that the community has for us. So.
Well, I thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. And as always, you do a great job with communicating to the community and doing your blogs. And there's never any secrets with you. So I know, and I respect that about you. I truly do. So thank you for your time. And I'm sure if we have follow-up questions from this, once this gets distributed out, I might be reaching out to you with some feedback and questions they might have.
Well, I'm grateful for what you do and what the drop does. This is for the drop.
Yes.
And the public service that you and others do for this community. Our kids are phenomenal. Yeah. The most resilient piece of this whole COVID experience, pandemic, the most resilient group is our children. They are.
You're right.
And it's us adults who sometimes screw it up or make more out of it than it is. But we all of us have I believe all hands are on deck. All oars are being pulled at the same time. And I'm just grateful for what you do and others.
Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate you. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day.